I am calling the Urban Affairs meeting to order. It is Tuesday, July 28th, and we are holding this meeting with councilors attending in person and remotely. No public attendance will be permitted. The meeting will be televised on WMCT-TV, and because we do have a counselor on Urban Affairs doing remotely, I'm going to do a roll call. So, Councillor Doucette.
Councillor Doucette is present.
Councillor Navin.
Councillor Navin is present.
Councillor Wagner.
Councillor Wagner is present.
Councillor Landers.
Councillor Landers is present.
And Councillor Roby is present. So we have our 5 Urban Affairs Committee members present. We have 2 items on our agenda this evening. The first one is Order 20-100-7975, a proposed zoning amendment from Councillor Ossing, Chapter 650, to add a new Section 38, creating a large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic overlay district. And we have Order Number 20-100-7976, a communication from Attorney Mark Burbo on behalf of Marlborough Hub LLC, together with the proposed zoning map change off of land off of Valley Street, identified as a portion of map 82 parcel 125, currently zoned industrial, from industrial to residence C. And unless there's an objection, I'm going to take the latter first. I understand that we have the petitioner on the meeting virtually. I don't know if Attorney Burbo is there or just Mr. Evangelist, but he is there. So this is a request from Mr. Evangelist to rezone this property. It has a little bit of history to it. It was before us in the past for first a order to take by eminent domain and then an order to rezone, which was never finalized by the city council, so it's back before us again. I do have a couple of communications I would like to reflect. The first one is from the planning board. They met and we received their letter dated July 2nd, 2020, where they recommended unanimous 6-0 approval of the petition. And then today we received 2 communications, one from Mr. Cook saying that he has, oops, that's the wrong one. That's the solar voltaic. Where are my communications? I have them. The first one from Tom DePercio, city engineer, where he is recommending that the remainder of the former railroad land to the north of parcel 82, 131A, and to the south behind the fire station also be included in the rezoning petition. Not doing so will leave in place small landlocked portions of the industrial zone. The rezoning of this industrial zoned parcel to RC may have implications on a residential subdivision which was proposed for this parcel and subsequently withdrawn. The subdivision consisted of 4 lots and the improvement of the paper street up to planning board standards. Duplexes which are allowed by right in the RC zone were proposed for each of the lots. Multiple family housing with greater than 2 units is allowed in RC by special permit, and the number of units is dependent on the lot area. The rezoning of the industrial zoned parcel to RC may increase the total number of units that could be included in the proposed subdivision. However, these are other ancillary issues relating to the subdivision that will also affect the number of units. And then we also have from the building department, from Commissioner Cook, a very lengthy letter, which I will try to not read the whole thing, but he is writing to express his opposition to rezoning the industrial zoning district to RC for the portion of parcel 82-125. He says it is split into 3 different zoning districts: RC industrial and business zoning. Approximately 54,990 square feet is located in the RC, 24,618 in industrial, and 1,285 in the business zoning district. If the proposed change is approved, the lot will be split by 2 different zoning districts. I'm opposed to changing the district lines. I agree that this area of industrial zone is left over from a slow erosion of the industrial zoning district. It's my opinion that this small remainder should be eliminated completely and not just this portion of one lot. By changing only one portion, it will totally landlock the two small sections, and both areas will be isolated with no street frontage. I prefer that the industrial zone lots of 82-125, 82-131A, 82-132, and 82-600 be examined for possible elimination rather than just the proposed change of only a portion of one lot. And then he goes on to talk about the ramifications of dwelling, which we don't really know anything about and is not our purview at this point. But the history of the rezoning, there was a request to the planning board. I think it became clear that what the petitioner wanted to do at that time was not going to work without a rezoning. So it is back before us. I will open it up to members of the committee with a vote for questions or comments. If anybody has any, Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think the comments of the city engineer as far as extending the rezoning to cover the other property on the other side of Valley Street, I think it is, to go behind the fire station makes a lot of sense. So if we're going to go through the trouble of doing one piece, we might as well make it consistent and kind of, correct the wrong completely, shall we say. This is a paper street that dates back, probably 100 years or so just never got developed. So I think addressing that makes a lot of sense. I definitely be supportive of both changes, but I'd like to hear what other councilors have to say. Thank you.
Any other councilors with questions or comments? Councilor Landers?
Thank you. I have really no real reservations, but I think it's time, to move on it. But I think we have to, I wish I had an opportunity to speak to the building commissioner, after we received his communication today, because he does have some reservations. But I'm not sure that I'm not looking for someone to change my mind or something, but I think we should move on this. This parcel of land is serving no purpose right now. And so unless, we come up with some ideas of good, solid reasons not to do it, I guess I'm almost ready to move on it.
Any other questions or comments from any of the voting members? Any from non-voting members? Councilor
You can say Tenero.
Ossing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So two questions. One, if we do include the other parcels as the engineer talks about and the building commissioner kind of recommends, can we get answered if that requires, do we have to re-advertise the whole thing, if that's the case, if we're going to include those other pieces? Or is that going to be a subsequent clarification later on? I don't know, but that's just one thing to take into account if you want to consider their comments. And the second part is, my memory's fading. I don't recall what the building, because when it's rezoned, it now opens up new building. So what was the applicant planning to do with the property? Do we know, or can the applicant answer?
It's my understanding when this was before the planning board that they did ask. He has not submitted anything at this point. I don't believe he was waiting because his first proposal needed some work on it. I think it needed variances. The planning board was not real happy with the proposal. So I think his thinking was with the additional land, he can do other things with the design of the property, but he has not said what he wants to do. I didn't go into the detail of it, but I believe the commissioner does bring up the fact that he could in fact not do, the original plan was to do 4 duplexes on the property. He could in fact do a single building and do a 25-unit multifamily structure. That would require a special permit from the city council if he went that route. If he goes with the duplexes, I believe he just needs to do the planning board work that's required. So at this point, he has not submitted anything. The only thing he indicated to the planning board was that the lots would be bigger, and if he went with his original plan.
Can we ask I'm, you know.
He is on, we can ask
Typically-
him if,
Typically, you know, we do zoning changes, and we always say, don't talk about what the project is, but we always kind of know in the back of our mind what the proponent is proposing.
Correct.
So I would like to hear from the proponent, if the zoning change goes through, what would he be proposing? Just so that it's on the record and I can hear, is it 2 buildings, 10 buildings, 100 you know, what is he interested in doing? I think that's fair to know if we're going to rezone it, what do we think we're going to get out of it?
so Mr. Evangelos, I understand you are on with us this evening virtually. Can you respond to the question? Do you know what you're going to do? Are you there, Mr. Evangelos? I don't see,
I believe he was muted, unfortunately.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
oh, now we can hear you, yes.
Okay, I might have been muted.
So did you hear the question?
Yes, I did.
Would you like to enlighten us?
Yes, 2015, I started this project, and it was withdrawn. There was always going to be 4 units, 4 pieces of 4 different lots, 4 duplexes. Now, it required a couple waivers, so I withdrew this last year due to the recommendation of the planning board to come before the city council and clean up the zoning. So it's always been 4 lots, 4 duplexes. I needed a couple waivers. The waivers would be 2 sidewalks on each side, etc. So it's always, so I withdrew that without prejudice to bring it back to the council to clean it up. Like every other single lot down that whole stretch, the railroad bed was always rezoned to what the abutter property was. And this is just one of those properties, just like the one behind the fire station. The one behind the fire station would have to be a separate petition. To lump these 2 together is totally 2 separate projects. It has to be advertised, the fire department one has to be, and there's probably a bunch more that haven't been rezoned. I mean, this property is just sitting there as industrial, it's a landlocked and it can't be used. And there's many benefits, as I did in my presentation, during the city council presentation. The benefits way outweigh. Now, this is the first time that I heard from Commissioner Cook claiming that a lot would be split if this happens. I totally didn't understand what that was all about. This thing here is a great project for the city. Did that answer your question, Councilor Gossing?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
So no, Mr. Evangelos, what I'm asking is, your initial proposal was for 4 lots, 4 duplexes. If the zoning change goes
Correct.
through, what are you planning?
Well, I'm going to go back to the planning board, and then I'll probably just go forward with the 4 units again. I don't know if I can have an additional unit. There might be an additional lot that might happen, but it's very slim that it will happen. But I'm going to leave that up to the planning board to decide that. It's not going to create a 25-unit complex. It's not going to have 25 separate lots. The lots are going to be half-acre lots, and they're going to be 3 times larger than the whole area. All those lots are like 5 to 10,000 square feet. These lots are half an acre, which is like 30,000 square feet. These houses, these duplexes are going to be absolutely beautiful. They're going to enhance the value of all the properties in the area. The neighbors want it. They want this property cleaned up. All the abutters for years have been using this property for logs and trees and grass trimmings and branches. I mean, the people around that area want this done. And it just makes sense. So I've been doing this since 2015. So I've been back and forth. I had to get a 21E test done. I had to hire an engineer to make sure the wall was secure there. I ran into a number of abutters. And then the mayor decides that he wants to take the property after it's been there for 200 years. He wants to take the paper street, which was totally illegal for whatever reason. I don't know, and I'm not going to go into that. So I'm not going to do anything different than what's being proposed. I'm only coming here just to clean the lot up, Councilor.
So I guess I'm looking for you to tell me you're not changing the plans and it's 4 duplexes, because you keep saying there's a
Correct.
chance to add another parcel.
Well, right now, that's not in the plan, but that's gonna be up to the planning board. if-
No, no,
if
no,
it can be in
so I beg to differ, Mr. Evangelist. You are the one that submit, the planning board's not gonna tell you what to do. You go to the planning board with what you want to do. So again, I ask the question, what do you want to do with the property? 4 duplexes
I'm gonna-
or 5?
I'm gonna do exactly what I petitioned originally. That's what I'm going back in there for.
Okay, so again, I'm looking for you to say the words, you're doing 4 duplexes.
Correct.
No, that's correct's not the, that's me saying it. I need you to say it, Mr. Evangelist. Because if you can't say it, that means you've got in the back of your mind, you're gonna go put a 5th duplex on there.
Well, they
You
put
can't
a
dispute me
fifth
because you're not arguing the point.
You can do it a single family, possibly, as long as it's an area for it.
So, Madam Chair, the point is, I want to make known to the council what's potentially available to go there. And the applicant originally wanted 4 duplexes. With this zoning change, he can increase that. So if the council's happy with that, fine, but the council should be aware of that. The applicant's struggling because he doesn't want to say 5, because he knows that could potentially impact the vote of the council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Ossing. Are there any other counselors who have questions who have not had a chance to speak? Nope. Counselor Landers?
Madam Chair, I just want one clarification, and I think it could be important for what the President's mentioning myself. You know, he mentions that each lot is a half acre and it's 30,000 square feet. I'm pretty sure a half acre is about 20,000 to 22,000 square feet. And that could make a big difference when it comes time to construct a duplex. You know, whether you have 4 garages or 2 garages or the dimensions of the house. So if you have 4 lots that are half acres and we feel that each lot is like 20 to 22,000 square feet, that's a big difference than having lots at 30,000.
If I may, Madam, I made the mistake, it's 20,000 square feet. I didn't mean to say 30.
Well,
You're right.
that gives us a better idea, Madam Chair. I just want to question him on that. That gives us a better idea, Madam Chair, what could or could not go there. When I talked earlier, when Commissioner Cook, you know, mentioned 25 units and 37 units, you know, that perked up because, you know, that gets a little scary when someone talks about a couple of parcels of land, and then all of a sudden from 4 duplexes up to multi-units. I've walked that area at one time. I think I walked it one time with Mr. Evangelist, and I walked it one time with one of the abutters. So it's, you know, those are the clarifications, Madam Chair, that, you know, we have to have a pretty good idea what he is thinking, and that's why, Mr. President, you're correct in pursuing your questioning, because, you know, none of us like surprises. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To answer a couple of questions, the original proposal that came before the planning board, I think in our packets, you all had received the map that goes with the zoning change. You will notice that the parcel of interest is pretty much a triangle and would be a little bigger triangle if the change from industrial to RC is granted. But the original plan called for Lot 1 to be 35,650 square feet, Lot 2 to be 15,800 square feet, Lot 3 to be 15,078 square feet, and Lot 4 to be 17,153 feet. Lot 1 is actually the corner of Valley Street going up, and then Lot 2, 3, and 4, Lot 4 being at the very end of that. It's my understanding that the paper street that got mentioned is actually the area to the west of what's marked the area of interest. not the actual land zoned industrial. I did, in looking at this map and looking at the abutters, the land that's mentioned by Mr. DePercio as being to the north, 82-131A, is currently zoned business, and it currently has a auto parts store on it. If we change the back portion of that lot from industrial to RC, it now has that property two different zones, with one of those zones not allowing retail sales on it. So I would not rezone that piece by myself to RC. I might rezone it to business, so it was all identical. The property behind the fire station is owned by the city. The city could rezone it. The fire station property below Valley Street and onto Maple is zoned business. So also zoning that business makes much more sense than zoning it to RC. So I would not change the whole parcel to be RC personally. I wouldn't do it. I would, we have a request in front of us to rezone part of it. I would focus on that for tonight and worry about the other two pieces at a different time, is my personal opinion. I see we have Mr. DePercio on with us, I believe. I don't know if Mr. Cook is coming. I know he was at the ZBA meeting, and I'm not sure if that's still going on. So if anybody has questions for Mr. DePercio? No? Or, all right, anybody?
Well, Madam Chair, I did have one question.
Councilor Landers.
Just back to you. When you mentioned that we would look at this at another time, do you mean, part of this session, or part of this before we vote, or work on this and then come back to visit this in the future? What did you mean by we look at this another time?
I guess that's up to the Urban Affairs Committee. We have something in front of us. It's a request to rezone a portion of the property. It's the portion that's owned by the current applicant, that is next to 82-125. So it's only the portion of the piece that you see clearly outlined that would be part of the property that he owns. Two other pieces of that industrial zoned stretch are not owned by this petitioner. So I guess we don't have the solicitor, but my thinking would be we would need to re-advertise rather than just voting a zoning change. Plus, it's owned by a totally different person, and I don't think we want to just rezone something without having the owner of the property having a right to have a say on whether they even want it rezoned, especially not to RC, when their majority of their property is business owned. So we have choices. We can table this. Somebody can move to approve what we have in front of us. And then if somebody decides that somebody wants to pursue rezoning the rest of it, it can be done in steps. We can move to deny. Choices.
I think, Madam Chair, that's what I was trying to say earlier. I'd like to move on that part. I'm not so sure if we want to get in the business of rezoning something. Personally, I have no idea who owns that second group. But we would have to go through some process in, I imagine, notifying that person, see what he would ever do with it. I imagine it could increase his taxes. It's all kinds of complications. So I'm not so sure if we're not going over a task here or a duty, and we have a petitioner that's in that wants to move on a certain project. And, I guess we could, move on that if that's the consensus here. And maybe if that abutter or that other person, if they were aware of what's going on, it might perk their interest and say, hey, God, we might as well do something too. So I guess my feeling would be, if we want, move on what the petitioner is looking for. You know?
I agree. If I may add, Madam Chairman, the property that's in question is surrounded by residential property. I don't understand what you're saying about the property being surrounded by business zone, and the auto parts store has a tiny, tiny little piece that's touching my property. So this property is totally surrounded by residential. It's in keeping with the whole neighborhood.
Mr. Evangelist, no, you're wrong. If you look at the map, the parcel to the east of you on the south along Valley Street is business zoned.
No, it's
As
residential.
is-
It's rezoned. The apartment complex is rezoned residential. I was on the city council when we rezoned those apartments. All
Well,
that
not
parking
according
lot
to
is
the
all
GIS map today.
residential. Yes, it is.
All right.
It's all residential. It's
I
the
think
whole
that-
property surrounded.
Mr.
What are you saying?
Evangelist, thank you. The concern I think that the building department, that Mr. Cook had, is that it will landlock that piece behind 82-131, which is zoned industrial. Whether that's a concern for the owner or not, it's not big enough to do anything on. Excuse me, Mr. Evangelist. Excuse me, Mr. Evangelist, you do not have the floor. Thank you. And then it also landlocks, although there is access from Valley Street, the property behind the fire station. But as you said, we have something in front of us. If somebody wants to make a motion, we can continue.
Motion to approve as currently defined, or currently written, to rezone the property.
All right, there is a motion before us, which is that the land off Valley Street owned by Marlborough Hub LLC, shown on Assessor's Map 82 as parcel 125, presently zoned partly Residence C and partly industrial, be rezoned entirely as Residence C. As said industrial portion, parcel 125 is contiguous to the proponent's residentially zoned portion of Assessor's parcel 125, and neither contiguous to any other industrial zone land, and not practical or feasible for lawful industrial uses. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion from voting members?
I'm ready to vote, but I just have one more question. Okay, does that create more problems for us in the future? Or would that only happen, Madam Chair, if one of the abutters or the owner of the other land come in and try to do something? I mean, are we putting ourselves in a box or a bind, or are we doing our part by moving this particular parcel along and then, you know, let the petitioner do what he wants to do, as long as he agrees and commits to what he told us tonight, what he plans on doing?
It's up to each individual counselor to vote how they feel. To me, leaving it zoned industrial doesn't hurt anybody, except for the applicant, because they would have to go back to the planning board with their original plan. It still might not make any difference, since we don't really know for sure what the planning board's opinion will be.
Madam Chair?
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much. I was having some technical difficulties. I needed to pull up the zone map, just for my own sanity, so I used my phone. But it looks like the industrial strip that we're talking about changing, looks like there's a small gap between that and the business section that's zoned in 82-131. So the only other issue is the 82-131A. The back strip of that, in a very small amount, is still zoned industrial. Maybe that small strip needs to be zoned business to make it more consistent with the lot line versus this artificial line.
And that is a possibility, but that's not before us this evening.
Madam
Councilor
Chair, I
Wagner.
have a question.
Yes, Councilor Wagner?
To clarify, so I understand the vote, if we vote in favor as it's written before us, does this in fact impact the lot 131 so that we'll be changing that strip in the back to the person who owns that?
No, we will not be changing that with this particular vote. This is very specific for the property that is only owned by the petitioner, although
Okay.
it does impact that now, well, it does, I guess it doesn't really impact it. It changes from industrial to RC. That doesn't really impact 131A specifically. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Dumas.
Thank you. So as the ward councilor for this area, I have met with the evangelists numerous times. I have seen the plans. The plans have not changed in the last, God, this has been before us before, so probably a year and a half. They have been through the ringer with the planning board, the city of Marlborough as well. Those plans have yet to have changed that much. It is a very dense neighborhood. However, where they want to clean up that parcel of land, it's very overgrown. People tend to hang out there. There's a lot of trash. This will definitely make the area a lot more attractive in that neighborhood. The fire station is right next door to it. I think this zoning change would clean up that area to make everything on the same level playing field regarding zoning. This probably was zoned who knows how long ago. And like I said, I have seen the plans to Councilor Osling's concerns. Those haven't changed as much. I'm sure he would be more than happy to send us those plans. They're very well done. I believe that there's even talk that the evangelist may want to move into one of those parcels. I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure they will be nice enough for him to want to move into those property that he plans on building. I'm not a voting member of Urban Affairs, but I've never had an issue with looking at these plans moving forward. But again, Urban Affairs can make the final decision. But like I said, that area of House Street Valley could use a little bit of love in TLC. If they don't do something with that land, then someone else obviously will. I prefer to keep it local. I think the evangelist owns a building across the street, so it's not like that, a business across the street, so it's not like that property would get dismayed, or they want to be proud of the property that they want to build, having meeting with the evangelists. Having said that, it's in Urban Affairs' hands, and whatever you decide to do moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Seeing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councillor Landers.
Councilor Landis votes yes.
Councillor Wagner.
Councilor Wagner votes yes.
Councillor Navin.
Councilor Navin votes yes.
Councillor Doucette.
Councilor Doucette votes yes.
And Councillor Roby votes yes. That is 5 in favor. This recommendation will get reported out on August 25th, and it's 4th. It's my understanding that it needs to be voted on that evening because this is a zoning change. It's a map change. I don't know if that technically, maybe we can find out for sure. I don't think we have, yes.
So, Madam Chair, we had the public hearing on June 22nd, so the 90 days gets you to September 22nd, right?
Okay. So
July,
we're,
August, September? I said, what's that?
which is a
September
Monday.
21st. So you have 3 meetings to choose from.
Okay,
You have
all
August
right.
24th, September 14th.
Thank you, my notes are,
September
oh, that's, thank you. That's, I saw it somewhere, I'm confusing it with the other one. Here, Karen, you can take this. So, we will report this out at our next meeting, and we have plenty of time then for it to lay on the table. So, Mr. Evangelist, if you're still there, you heard the vote. You will hear the final vote at a date in the future. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our next item, which is the zoning amendment for the Chapter 650 to create the large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic overlay district. And this was Councilor Ossing's baby. He is here. He did do a public hearing. The planning board had a public hearing. We do have the letter from the planning board, also dated July 2nd, 2020, where they have their recommended unanimous 6-0 approval of the petition with the following conditions. 1, that appropriate screening from abutting neighborhoods be included in the installation, and 2, that the installation be sited in such a way to preserve the scenic view from the rail trail. We also, I don't have long enough arms, received a communication from the building commissioner where he says he has no additional comments, and from Mr. DePercio where he is giving us some comments. He says he's been working with the city's solid waste consultant over the past several years on environmental monitoring and assessment of the existing landfill cap. The work needed to correct deficiencies has been determined, and currently the final design of this corrective action work is being completed. As you know, earlier this year, the council approved a $3,029,000 transfer for the required corrective action work and also to prepare the southern portion of the site for future recreational use. In my opinion, the city should not include the southern parcel, map 30, parcel 4C, in the ordinance. In 2015, the city permanently dedicated this parcel for park and recreation purposes, and a design for a new ball field complex was completed for the site. Even if ball fields are not currently needed or desired, I believe the parcel should be developed for some sort of recreational use, such as a park. I'm also in agreement with the planning board that the scenic view from this part of the site next to the rail trail looking northeast over the Fort Meadow Reservoir is an asset to the city that should not be eradicated by a ground-mounted solar installation. Additionally, the eastern portion of the site around the old incinerator is needed by the DPW for materials, storage, and snow disposal. It would be our request that this area also not be included in a future solar development. I prepared a rough sketch showing the areas I believe should be set aside for recreation and for DPW use. I've also attached my original comments on the proposed language. So the council did receive in their box, I believe, a copy from our trustee clerk. Councilor Ossing took the time to take the comments from Mr. DePercio and put them into the original language of the order that was sent to us. So I would like to take time to go through that to make sure that the public is aware of the additional language being proposed. So if you all go to page 3, under site plan review, number 4B, he is requesting that we add in that the site plan showing will have property lines and physical features, adding in paved areas, tree lines, monitoring wells existing and proposed structures, and fences existing and proposed drainage improvements, including roads for the project site. He's adding a new number 10, stormwater management. The project proponent shall design a stormwater management plan and provide details and supporting documents as necessary to comply with Massachusetts DEP stormwater policy and Marlborough zoning ordinances. On page 4, in F, operation and maintenance plan, we're adding in the words management facilities, vegetation management in the sentence where it says that the project shall submit a plan which shall include measures for maintaining safe access to the installation, stormwater management facilities, vegetation management. Adding in G, utility notification, permitting. The project proponent shall provide to the city copies of all permit application and final permits, including but not limited to Mass DEP, Electric Utility, Conservation Commission, Site Plan Review Committee, etc. is recommending deleting from D, A, setbacks, both Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, which all had the front yard depth shall be at least, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't, they had different. For front yard, the front yard depth shall be at least 10 feet, provided, however, that where the lot abuts a conservation use, residential use, or public way. That language is being deleted. For side yard, it's each side yard shall have a depth at least 15 feet. That language is being deleted. And for rear yard, the rear yard depth shall be at least 25 feet, provided that the lot abuts a conservation use, residential use, or public way. On page 5, under I, design standards, number E, topsoil, adding in a statement, no topsoil shall be removed, adding in, or disturbed from existing areas. The solar facility shall be constructed on the existing grade or grades that have been built up from the existing grade. On page 6, under safety and environmental standards, item B, adding a sentence at the end, land clearing details as well as habitat and pollinator details which are common for these projects shall be clearly presented in the site plan application. Adding in L, abandonment or decommissioning, both clarifying that it's site plan review committee and adding a sentence within 150 days of discontinued operations, the project proponent shall present decommissioning plans consisting of. Adding in on page 7, continuing with abandonment or decommissioning, in Roman numeral 3, restoration of all disturbed ground areas by loaming and seeding or other means suitable to the site plan review committee. In number C, clarifying the city and that its site plan review committee in consultation with the city legal and finance teams, and adding in a sentence, the minimum financial surety to be provided shall be no less than $70,000 per MW-DC installed. Additional financial surety may be required for a pertinent facility such as battery storage. And that covers the additions. Just for clarification, there is an Exhibit A, which does indicate that the property would include Assessor's Map 30 Parcel 4 and Assessor's Map 30 Parcel 4C. And we did receive from Mr. DePercio a map where he does outline both the recreation site of 44C and where he is suggesting at the DPW site that there not be any kind of installation. You will also note to the northeast on the property, there is a 30-40B that the city does not own, so that would not, and is not included in this list. There would be no array on that part of the property. So from that, I will open it up to questions, comments, first from the voting committee members. Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So this was originally developed for another parcel project that was on the other side of town where it was private property. This one is actually owned by the city, and I understand, there's an as-of-right citing that if this was private property, we would just kind of let them go. On the other hand, if this is being developed on city property, how much oversight will the council have on this type of project? Because it is on it's on city property. So
I'm sorry, did you say the city council would have a say?
No, I'm asking, how much oversight will we have?
Oh.
I mean, who's going to actually?
It's my understanding in talking to the legal department today that because it is city-owned property, it goes to the executive control, which is the mayor.
Okay.
There is a question whether, and Mr. Grossfield did remind me that the council recently did a approval for an order to have solar arrays on our school buildings. The council was involved, and he was pretty sure it was because of the length of the lease. When I talked to the mayor was concerned with his ability for how long he can lease property. My understanding from Councilor Ossing, and he's got his hand up, so I'll let him speak in a minute, is that this would go out for an RFP, and we would lease the land to somebody who would come in and build. The council would have no say unless there's a question for how long the lease is. But Councilor Ossing, do you have further comments to that question?
The council do set. So you're right. The intent of this order is to allow a solar facility to be put on city land. So how that so if the order's approved and we say, okay, you want to put a solar facility on that land, the city's procurement office would then go out for bids and say, give us a proposal for the entire lot, for some of the lot as the city engineer recommends, for none of the lot. I mean, we can pick whatever we want. But the city council technically is out, the way it's written, the city council's out. That becomes the mayor's choice. I mean, we can put an order in to say, hey, do it right now. The mayor can say, I don't want to do it, and never do anything with it. But we have the option with this ordinance passed that allows us to put a solar facility here, all right? And it can be as big or as small as the mayor wants. I mean, I'm sure the council will have some influence and say, hey, we'd like to see one. But you pass this and he never puts one up, it's an ordinance on the books that allows us. My concern, and it was started by you with your efforts a couple of years ago, was here's a unique opportunity. I checked the mass.gov website, and I was wrong, Council. It's over 100 sites, not 200. It's 100 sites, 220 megawatts worth, that are already listed there that are in various stages of approval. So it's a, communities around the Commonwealth are pursuing this, right? Why? Because you don't use anything for your landfill. It becomes a opportune. Ours is kind of unique because we've targeted a parcel for recreation, which is fine. The council can always rescind it or not, just leave it alone and don't include it in the request for proposals. All right, and the view from the rail trail. Not going to argue. I'm on it every day. All right, but we've now increased, as you saw from the city engineer's comments. There's now a 50-foot buffer all the way around the property. We used to have 10 up front, 25 on the side, 25. Nope, now it's 50 feet all the way around. It's a 50-foot buffer. Can't build anywhere near it. All right, so what's it going to look? I mean, you can put in the bid specs what you want it to look like. We want to maintain the view. So either the solar panels are going to be short or they're not going to be in a certain area. It's in our control. But the question is, if the state is serious about meeting the 2050 non-carbon goals, people got to start sucking up and either figure out how they're either going to put solar or wind somewhere. And I think you've been a pretty staunch advocate that here's a start. And we don't have to do anything if it gets approved, but you have the opportunity now that if we think it's worth doing, there's revenue to the city based on the size of the project. There's potential opportunity for low-income people to save additional funds, again, based on the size of the project. I mean, 50-foot buffers, can't do this parcel, want this for DPW. We're going to narrow it down that we're going to have a couple of solar panels on the size of my house on there. But I mean, if we keep whittling it down. But if that's what the wisdom of the executive branch is going to be, fine. But here's an opportunity to explore it. And if we don't want to, don't approve the ordinance.
All right. We do have Solicitor Grossfield on with us, so I see he has his hand up. If you have some comments for us, please, Solicitor, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, so on the city council's role, there's a couple of ways that could play out, and it depends on the model of ownership for the future solar facility. But if it is a leasing situation, it's in all likelihood that there will be, a request for authorization to do a lease to the council. The property has to be declared surplus. That's another step that happens before that. The RFP will take place. So I think there will certainly be role for feedback, from the council during that process.
Thank you. Did you have other comments that you wanted to make before I go to someone else, since we kind of worked on that one piece?
That was the big issue I kind of had with that. I know at one point, we were talking about a climate resiliency committee, which has some relationship to projects like this. I'm not sure how that would be involved in the future. That's something that we need to take into account, but that's for another time. But I was just concerned as far as where things go, and I appreciate Solicitor Grossfield's and President Ossian's comments, so thank you.
Any other members? Councilor Landers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I love this project. I love that we're finally going to do something with a parcel of land that's been sitting there. Now, there's three parts to it. You know, I want the solar farm to be as big as possible, that when we go out to bid, we get a good response from many people. I also want the Department of Public Works to get part of a parcel that they feel would be adequate for what their needs would be. I hope it's a little more than just dumping snow there during the winter time. I'm not sure what the future holds for that. Okay, and then I'm finally getting to the final part, is the recreation part. Now, I don't really think, the way things are out there now, that, you know, we're gonna jump right in and put a couple soccer fields there. 10 years ago, I know there's certain guys that would have said, hey, let's get a couple soccer fields in there. But I think it's important, Madam Chair, that we look at those three elements. I know the executive level, you know, has a lot of say in this, but we must have some control over, you know, I think we've already given them, what, one bond for $3 million?
That's for the city, Mr. DePercio can correct me, but that's for $3 million to correct what I call 30-4C, the parcel where the rec field's gonna be. It's gonna put and increase the cap level there so that it would make it suitable to put a recreational field on there at a future date. That's $3 million's been approved.
Yeah.
Plans are being developed, and Tom can tell us, but I'm sure in the next, you know, year or so, you'll see a lot of dirt coming in.
Yeah.
Expensive dirt.
And that was not a bond, that was a transfer.
Oh, that's right, you're
Yes,
right.
that's
So
correct, yeah.
what I'm looking for, Madam Chair, that the Department of Public Works certainly has some input in how big a parcel they need and what they think they might need. Now, the recreational piece, I don't really want one person deciding that. Now, I guess what I really want is the Recreation Department as well as the Recreation Commission. You know, what can they envision that we might need down there? All right? And then Conservation, of course, will have some input. But I want, you know how I've always said before, this is kind of the last parcel of land that we have. You know, we don't like to buy land. We proved that when we put the school at the high school and took away a land, all right? So, you know, this is the last parcel of land. Let's get the most out of it. Let's get some money out of it. Let's give the Department of Public Works a parcel that they can use to their benefit, and then let the Recreation Department in the future, you know, give us some of the additional recreational fields that we need. Now, that can be anything from soccer to lacrosse to playgrounds to walking paths and stuff like that. So I just hope that we listen to these groups and we end up to develop this piece of land. And you're right, 100 landfills have been developed, you know, around Massachusetts. And I've seen some pretty good ones on the South Shore. It's amazing. I mean, there's one on 495, they just took all the rubbish and made a mountain out of it. I'm not looking for that. I'm too old to go mountain climbing. But I just hope, Madam Chair, that this is an opportunity to finally take that parcel of land. You know, I hate to talk ancient history again, but when I first moved in Marlborough in '61, there was occasionally still dump fires up there. Isn't that scary? 1961. I think they were a mistake. I think it was spontaneous combustion or something. But I'm so glad that we're moving on this. And, you know, I love some of these solar farms. I don't always like the ones on right next to the highways, but, now, you know, not that we have to, but this Boston Scientific, do they have any interest in this, or any push, or somehow that, we could get a few ideas from them? I mean, they're a big abutter. The other thing I'd like to think that this possibility of this land could eventually give us the fireworks that we need on 4th of July. I'm only kidding on that, but I just hope we can really use this to the benefit of the whole city. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify for everybody, the parcel 34C that is mentioned by Mr. DePercio that he recommends we remove from this, which actually before I even saw his letter, for me personally, that was going to be a suggestion I made. I will remind you that in 2015 or 16, I'm not sure, I think it was 15, late in the year, we did vote for, we did accept a park grant, and we voted a bond, and we voted to have 11 acres of this original one parcel, which then became 34C, and gave it to the care, custody, and control of the Recreation Department. So to me, even the mayor can't put a solar array on there without the permission of the Recreation Department. Obviously, there's no park there now. There's no plan to put a park there, but the council did all vote to do the full $3 million transfer to make the land ready for a park in the future, with the statement that the mayor would rescind the original bond at some point. He hasn't done that yet. So I would just like to throw out there, I can't make the motion, but to me, I think 34C needs to be out of the picture completely, so that it's just off the table, but that's my own preference. And then the rest of it, I think as was made clear, the RFP gets made by the mayor, and it's for the whole site, 30 parcel 4. Mr. DePercio has outlined an area that he would like to see not encroached upon, but it's part of the parcel. So that would be up to the mayor to listen to that request.
And you say the whole, excuse me, the whole site, does that mean the whole parcel of land there?
Well, if you look at what we got today from Mr. DePercio, it's 2 pieces that are on this as the area that would be included in this overlay. 30-4, which is the bigger piece, and goes from Boston Scientific Way to 85, and then 85 almost to Northborough. I mean, not Northborough. Oh my goodness, to Hudson. With the little tiny piece of 30-4 that's circled in there not being part of the bigger parcel. So the DPW site with the barn that's currently there, and where they store snow, and where sometimes people drop off trees that brush that they've cut down, all of that is part of the bigger piece, 30-4.
Is that the one you're looking at? No? Oh,
So he has this little piece marked off, but because it's part of the bigger parcel, it's included. It's only his suggestion. So unless we do some sort of a zoning change, which I don't think comes into play, but I'm sure that there would be an understanding by the current mayor or the future mayor when they go out for this array, which leaves, and I was actually going to measure it, and then I never did, to see how long that piece of property is and how deep the hill is. And it's pretty big, in my opinion. When I walk the rail trail, there can be a large solar field put on that piece of property, even without the recreation site and the DPW site. All right, Councilor Doucette, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my concern, basically, a lot of what's remaining, if you take out the 2 locations, the DPW and the recreation site, is basically a north-facing downward hill. you know, that's not good for solar. So I would rather keep those included within this zone that we're creating and let the chips fall as they may.
Right, it is included, it's not a
Right, but I wouldn't
separate
reduce
parcel.
it. Let me rephrase that, I wouldn't reduce it.
It's outlined on a map as a request from Mr. DePercio
Right,
saying,
right.
please don't touch this.
Right, and that's, we're not at that point yet.
Right,
So
we're not at that
I would rather
point.
keep, because there's other ways to do it. We can do carports and things like that, and they can put stuff underneath, and it all becomes part of this meta thing that still
Right.
collects solar and gets optimum
But 30-4C
solar production.
is relatively flat, but is, as I said, currently under the control of the Recreation Department.
Right, and that would have to be approved, anything that would have to be done would have to be approved by the Recreation Department.
If we leave the parcel there.
If we leave the parcel there, and I'm fine with that.
We
You
take
know,
it
let
out?
that, like I said, set the zone up as it is right now, then we go through the approval process, and then after that, other things need to be addressed and resolved, and I'd rather keep the bigger options and let it winnow down on its own, instead of us coming in and acting to eliminate them at this level, at this point.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Thank you,
I'm gonna-
Madam.
I'm going to go to Counselor Navin
That's
because he hasn't had a chance to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that, and the opportunity to speak here. As far as this entire effort goes, I just want to thank the Council President and Councilor Doucette for their work on this. The opportunity to get solar in the city, additional solar in the city, is one I'm extremely supportive of. And one, to get some in the heart of Ward 6 is also very exciting as an opportunity. This is, to echo what Councilor Lander said, this is a beautiful area, and it's not often that you can sit there and say that, you know, this old landfill, this capped landfill that has been it's kind of a horrific sight over the years, is something that we want to make sure we protect and we balance with the views that we get up there. And I think that that's incredibly important, especially as the planning board did note as well. There is a street that rises quite a bit above this. It's Geiges Lane off of Hudson Street, that they will look down on this. I went up last week to take a look to see how much. It doesn't actually appear that it will be that much of a view of it, the way the land slopes down and shifts the way it's there. But I would ask that, you know, and hope that as we continue to work on this, that the recommendations from the planning board for the views from the rail trail and from Geiges Lane are protected as much as they can be. You know, these things are important and they're about balance. But, you know, I echo some of the other councilors that we need to try and get as much solar as we can out of this. And I would be supportive of passing this as it is, as the one large parcel, you know, to kind of just jump on what Councilor Doucette just said about, you know, having the ability to, you know, approve all of this and then go through the process. It's already, the recreation spot is already protected and would need the approval of the Recreation Department. The DPW site is currently in use, but perhaps in the future it won't be. Perhaps there is another parcel that the DPW could use, and that would be available for solar, and, you know, we could get as much money as possible for allowing this installation to pass. So I would be supportive of that and look forward to the conversation continuing. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anybody else who hasn't had a chance to speak? Counselor Wagner?
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to also echo those thoughts. I think this is a really important project. I'm excited about the use of land, and while I really appreciate and know we need our green space and our places, our recreational areas, this is part of our responsibility, and accepting that there is a climate crisis, and if we're not moving towards this type of energy, those parks won't matter much when people can't breathe the air outside. So I just applaud this. I think it's moving us in the right direction. It's collectively where the whole state needs to be moving, and I think it's really exciting, an exciting opportunity, and I thank all the work that went into getting us to this point.
Thank you. Counselor
Okay,
Landers?
getting back to my original concern, without putting Tom, the engineer, on the spot, could he give us an educated guess at how many square feet the Department of Public Works site would be, and then do the same thing for the recreation? I don't think you can do it in acres or half acres, but just square feet. Because what happens along the line, you know, I want as many solar panels there as possible, but you know, down the line, when we go out for an RFP and we figure out how much revenue, I want to get as much revenue too. But, you know, sometimes you start pecking away at a parcel of land. Now, if 30-4C is untouchable, and that's 80,000 square feet, I'm just guessing at that, you know, that would make me feel quite comfy. And then, of course, it's up. So I don't know if Mr. DePercio could just give us an educational guess at what either through acreage, but I think square feet, the Department of Public Works site is, and then what the rec site is.
Mr. DePercio, are you still on?
I am, yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
I did ask the clerk to see if he could quickly get a tape measure and measure it out, but if you know already, that will help.
Just approximately.
Yeah, I do. Well, I can tell you exactly how big 30-4C is, because that's already a separate parcel, and there's a plan that shows it, and that's 11.31 acres. So that's the area of 30-4C that was dedicated under Article 97 as recreation land. The sketch that I drew of an estimate of a DPW site is probably about 8 acres of the remaining, so 8 acres out of 30-4, which 30-4 is about 24 acres.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Yeah, I believe, and Madam Chair, that 30-4, that recreation, that can't be touched by anybody, is that true?
Not without the permission of the Recreation Commission.
Okay, so,
Counselor Ossing?
So, Madam Chair, so again, I get back to, if you do the entire site, the overlay on the entire, both 34C and 34, we can't build on 34C. That's 11 acres. Just can't do it.
Okay.
Without getting changes. But why I say that is, maybe we start looking at that ball field and it's not an 11-acre ball field. Maybe it's a 7-acre ball field. I don't know. No one knows what we want to put on there yet. But I'd rather have the option of having it all zoned. I mean, you know, I love my city engineer. I'll just say that out front. But he just took a straight line and went right across for simplicity purposes. If I were the mayor going out to bid, I would bid the entire thing and then say, give me 4 acres off for a DPW site, or give me 8 acres off for a DPW site, and tell me what it is. Because the question I would ask the DPW, what do you need 8 acres for? We don't put 8 acres of snow on there. I mean, again, it's a simple line across. From an engineering standpoint, very simple. I acknowledge what Tom did. It's easy. But if you're going to look at, if you really want to maximize what you want to have for solar, if I were the mayor going out to bid for this, and he's going to have to come to us because he's going to need a lease approval, just like he did on the schools, that the council's going to have to say, we're going to give you approval to go for 20 years or whatever the lease is going to be. So we are going to get a swing at the pitch. But if I were going to go out to bid for it, I'd say, give me the enchilada and then give me a couple options. And then pick which one we think is the best that suits everybody's needs. And what that is, Council Landis, I have no idea. I really don't.
well,
But I want to have the opportunity to do as much as I can.
well, that's what happens though, Madam Chair. That's what I'm afraid of. You know, the next couple of years are gonna be very tight money-wise. So if we can maybe add an additional 20 solar panels, you know, it could happen. And, you know, as I said earlier tonight, you know, there's not much land around, so I just don't want to take that chance. Personally, I'd like to lock it in. And it is as far as the rec goes, but if you include it into the RFP, that's step one, that makes it look very tempting to maybe, you know, expand your solar field, that's all.
Right, and if we leave it in there, then it becomes available if the Recreation Department gives their permission.
That's a good way to look at
And
it.
the RFP includes that. So the RFP is going to be up to the mayor, I guess. well, first it's up to Recreation. If they say, nope, don't touch that property, then it's not there. If they say, sure, go ahead, because we know there's nothing's gonna happen for a while, then, or half of it, save the other half. I think as Councilor Ossing had said, he's probably convinced me that it's the smart move to go for the big bucks at this point in time, and just do the whole thing and see what happens.
Madam Chair, so I like the phrase "big bucks," and you know I'm always in from the financial end, but to me, it's the solar element for this particular part that makes it attractive, right? And I would hate to handcuff the city and let us see what the market brings. I mean, if the market's prices and we don't like it, we don't have to put one on there, or we do a smaller one. But I think it would be advantageous, I'm not on the committee to vote, to approve the ordinance with Tom and Priscilla's comments and the markups, get them to the solicitor to put in proper format for the council to vote on August 24th, because the 90-day period is September 8th. And we don't have another meeting after August 24th, so we would have to vote on it if we want, or we either A, start the public hearing all over, or we schedule a special meeting, which we can do. This is where you guys want to spend your summer.
And
Forget the AC part.
my hope is to finish this tonight. If for some reason there are still more questions, or it is 8:45, we do have another meeting that's being scheduled for next week. We could finish it up at that point. I know in talking to the solicitor, my plan is to not give him something on a Monday to be ready for Thursday. So he will have some time, because the meeting isn't until late August, assuming this is approved, for him to make sure that this is, I know there were a couple of typos that I saw, and just to make sure that it's all in proper language. And when everybody's finished, I do have a couple of questions specifically on the language. So, Councilor Landers.
Madam Chair, one more comment. You know, we have a short memory. We gave up a field at the high school to build a school. I could envision giving up more acreage, maybe for additional solar panels. Especially, we know the next couple of years are going to be tough times. So, you know, do we wrestle with the fact that we put 80 solar panels in or 96 solar panels? So, you know, I have a good memory what we did there. So things happen. So keep that in mind.
You are correct, and there's nothing that says at the end of the lease that that land can't get turned into a field. All right, I'm going to ask, I think I only really had one question, and I think since Mr. DePercio is still on, he may be able to help. On page 5, one of the things that is deleted, the sentence originally read, topsoil, no topsoil shall be removed from the site. Said topsoil shall be stockpiled on-site and used to stabilize the site with a maximum cover of 6 inches over loam. And then it said, any topsoil remaining after stabilization shall be stockpiled on-site for use during decommissioning. Now, what got deleted is the fact that the topsoil would be stockpiled on the site. So if there's no soil stockpiled, how can the topsoil remaining after stabilization be stockpiled on sites? Am I missing something, or should that last sentence also be gone? Mr. DePercio, are you following my question?
I am, and I think Priscilla and I were both making edits to that paragraph. And I'm trying to read it here as I comment, but my initial concern was that, knowing what I know about the cap of that landfill, there's not going to be able to be any cutting into that or stripping of topsoil. So the idea was that any solar facility is going to be constructed on the existing grade or grades that are built up from that. So that was really the intent of the first edit. after, so, I think the other part that Priscilla may have commented on had to do with topsoil that's, remaining after stabilization.
That sentence was there originally, I
Okay.
believe. So my concern is what's being removed is actually related to that last sentence. The topsoil shall be stockpiled on-site and used to stabilize the site. And then after that, the topsoil remaining after stabilization shall be stockpiled on the site for use during decommissioning. So if no topsoil is stockpiled, then there wouldn't be any topsoil remaining for stabilization.
Correct, yeah, I think your thinking is correct.
So would removing the last sentence along with the sentence that you've already removed make sense?
Yes.
Counselor Austin, are you?
No, I agree, and I apologize to both, I'm looking at the edit changes, so both Tom and Priscilla, you know.
Oh, and I only have
So the
them combined.
DPW, Tom's right, so he had one thing, and then Priscilla wanted something else, but how you're describing it is correct. I mean, that I would take out that last sentence.
So that last sentence would also be deleted.
Correct.
Okay. And then while we're on that same page, the design standards for the site plan, under D, it talks about screening. Every abutting property, private way, private driveway, recreation area, and public way shall be visually screened from the project through any one or combination of the following: location, distance, plantings, existing vegetation. So to me, that language takes care of the concern of the planning board that appropriate screening from abutting neighborhoods be included in the installation.
If I may, Madam.
Counselor
so
Austin?
the challenge is, you know, the Geekus Lane goes way up, and so they're looking down onto the property. So you know, if as designed, that the 11 acres in the field, you're gonna have 50-foot setback initially. I mean, we can put some trees in, but I don't know how you'll never blank everything off. And if the intent is to make sure the folks can't see a solar facility, I'm not sure you're ever gonna get that without constructing a enormous fence or hauling in 50-foot trees. And I mean, you know, I'm back to Ted Kennedy and windmills on Nantucket Sound. What do I want? Do I want what's gonna be good for the environment, or am I gonna appease 10 houses with what they see?
So I'm just going with the comment from the planning board was that they, my understanding from them was they wanted something added to this that covered the appropriate screening. To me, it's already in here, but now if you're saying it says every abutting property.
Well, they're across the street. They're not technically abutting, right? I mean, they're across
Well,
the street.
is it 300 feet?
I'm sure his house wouldn't be.
Abutting is adjacent. I mean, and that was primarily driven from the residential one that was submitted a couple of years ago to make sure that we protected the houses that were adjacent to that. These are across the street. I mean,
It talks about, where was the wording? Because I questioned it, zoning district designation for the parcels of land comprising the project site, a zoning map of the parcels identified, and then in site plan number 7 says the name, address, phone numbers, and signature of the project proponent, as well as all co-proponents or property owners. Nope, that wasn't it. Somewhere, Mr. DePercio, for the site plan, would abutters, there really is no abutters. It's not a special permit, it's not planning board, so are they considered an abutter?
Is your question with a filing with the site plan committee? Is there some definition of abutters? Is that
Right, it says for screening, every abutting property. So would Geekus Lane be considered, and even to me, the other one would be Boston Scientific. They're an abutting property, they're up on the hill looking down over this whole thing.
Yeah, but there's trees there, they're not gonna see it. When you're on the rail trail going up, there's
busy
trees
working.
going up there.
Those trees aren't in bloom all the time, but I guess it's more there are houses on Geekus Lane. I guess I've never realized that went up that much that they would see any more so than the last house on the end of Hudson would see. But I could be wrong. But is the wording every abutting property? Can we make it screened as much as possible, screened appropriately? How do we make that? Because if somebody looks at this and says, hey, I live at that house and I can look right down on this, then it hasn't been screened.
Again, I get back to the definition of abutting property.
So,
Tom
Mr.
can correct me, but it's
DePercio?
not across the street. I mean, abutting property is, my property line touches the property line in question.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Council President Ossing on that point. I know, having been at the planning board meeting when they discussed it, they did talk about the residents on Bacchus Lane, and those are really the only residents, I think, in the area here that would have any chance of seeing the solar facility. But I would have to agree that they're not technically not abutting.
Okay, so it would be Boston Scientific. That would be. Mr. Grossfield, I see you would like to make a comment also? Solicitor?
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great, sorry about that. So I would agree, from a legal perspective, abutting means the lot has to touch the landfill parcel we're talking about. It wouldn't be a lot across the street.
All right, so then it would be Boston Scientific is the only abutting property.
Well, I could argue there, the rail trail prevents them from abutting. I mean,
Mr. Grossfield, did you hear that? Does the rail trail count as something that separates the city property from Boston Scientific?
yeah, it's city
It
property.
certainly could. So if you even look at the sentence, it talks about abutting properties, private ways, private driveways. So it's those things that are to be screened, essentially, right? So, yes, if the rail trail is, and Tom may be able to clarify, if the rail trail is on city property or it's not, as long as the rail trail is not owned by Boston Scientific, then Boston Scientific will not be an abutter.
Okay, so then
Yeah, it's a separate.
the only abutter is 30-4B.
If you want to put to the extent possible in there, if you think that language gives you the comfort level to, you can say, visually screened to the extent possible. For one of them, if you want to add those wording, that's fine.
Comments, questions, anybody not okay with that? Councilor Wagner, did you hear his comment to add in the words? Shall be visually,
Yes, I'm good with it.
visually screened as appropriate? All right, then,
Chair?
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a general question. So the goal for tonight is basically to review this and get it to a point where it can be sent to legal, and then we're going to review it again next week's meeting? Is that the plan? Is that the plan you want?
The motion would be up to who makes the motion. If somebody moves to approve this tonight, we're done. If somebody feels like we still need to have discussion, then there would be a move to postpone until our meeting next week.
If I would,
Your call.
if I would ask, Madam Chair, I'm sure that the solicitor's not going to wait till the day before the council meeting to get it done. I mean, the edits are pretty straightforward. I'm sure he can turn it around relatively quickly and send it to the councils, and if they don't like what they see, they could ask you to add it to a future meeting, but I mean, these all seem pretty straightforward edits, in my opinion.
That is true. So, I mean, everybody has had a chance to look at the document that was provided to us with the color-coded changes, the track changes. If somebody wants to move to approve this as amended, that would be appropriate. If somebody wants to refer this to the solicitor and then have it come back to us for our meeting next week, that is also an option.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. I do have one other question.
Yes.
Just about the financial surety of $7,000 per megawatt DC installed. I'm assuming that that's an industry standard number, or is that, I'd just like to know where that number came from. But we're not putting this as a,
I just incorporated Tom DePercio's comments. If he,
okay,
I'm sure there's a standard that he probably went to, but
okay. Tom, you still there?
I am, yep. So that is a number from our consultant who has worked on a number of these projects and said that that's sort of the standard for
Okay,
for those requirements.
okay. Motion to send it to the city solicitor for final draft to be reviewed at the follow-on Urban Affairs meeting.
All right, I'm going to rephrase that and say, move to postpone and let the solicitor put this in proper legal form for our next meeting.
So moved.
I guess.
Oh, wait, Laura?
Can I ask
Oh,
a
I'm
question? Yeah, so I don't understand, if we could potentially vote on this tonight as amended, are we required to put it in proper legal form? I'm not getting why we're taking the time to take that extra step.
We are required for it to be in proper legal form, so regardless of whether we approve this tonight, there would still be the additional motion to and typically, as we did at the last meeting, we suspended the rules to send something to the solicitor, and then it will be on our August meeting. Because we don't, unless we set up a special meeting, we need to move this quickly, and so although I don't like to do it, we can request, because typically it would be suspend to ask it to be referred. We can't suspend because we need to act on the 24th. We need to vote on this on the 20th, or we can suspend on the 24th and act at a special meeting if that's the wish of the council, but it has to be in proper form.
Oh, okay, so thank you, Madam Chair, but I was just trying to understand the distinction, because I thought I heard you say we could make a motion tonight to vote on this as amended. So is that two separate, we're gonna vote on that and the proper legal form?
Yes, it's got to, I think that the comment that was made by Councilor Ossing was if the council wants to see this before August 24th, to make sure that we agree with the changes in final form, then we could do that. And then on the 24th agenda would be a letter from the solicitor stating the document is in proper legal form. We could vote on it. So we could do that tonight. We could vote on this and then refer it to the solicitor, because it has to be referred anyway. It's not like it's a suspension to do it. So it's up to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I was understanding correctly. So is that, if the motion that was first made by Councilor Doucette is to put it in proper legal form, is that precluding? Or is that we're doing both steps tonight? I want to make sure I understand when we're voting what we're voting for.
We're voting to have the solicitor put this in proper legal form so that we, as a committee, can look at it again at our next meeting, vote on it then, and then on the 24th at our meeting, when it's reported out, it will be in proper legal form. If we just approve this tonight, there's no official vote. It just gets done because it has to be in proper legal form. So it's kind of a special request. Councilor Landers?
Yeah, I think we should, is that, your motion been seconded yet? No?
Yes, it was
Yeah,
seconded by
okay,
me.
Fortunately, we have a scheduled meeting next week. If it wasn't, if we didn't already have another meeting, urban, scheduled next week, I would probably push to vote on tonight. But fortunately, I think we ought to follow the motion, all right? Let the city solicitor give it back to us next week. The subcommittee votes it next week, the 4th, and then we'll vote on it on the 24th of August, the whole city council. So I think we're within our timetable, and I think we ought to move on it.
It just kind of adds in that extra step without trying to figure out how to do it without saying we're doing it, because it has to be, that proper legal form piece is there. And sometimes documents come to us in proper legal form, but this one has been amended, so we need to make sure that all the language is correct, and the typos that I saw are fixed, and our one additional deletion and one additional addition are included. Okay, so,
Madam Chair?
is everybody clear? Counselor Doucette?
Thank you very much. I was just going to say, I agree completely with Counselor Landers on this. I know we have a meeting planned for next week. I figured this way we get a final clean draft. We just make sure we all agree with it next week. We move on. It's a 5-minute part of the agenda next week, and just gets it all nice and clean so we can vote on it on the 25th. That's why I did it the vote I did. Thank you.
Correct, yep. It makes it a nice, smooth procedure, so that we're looking at a clean document when we take our final vote as a council. So everybody's clear? Any comments before I take the roll call vote? Any further questions? Counselor Ossing?
Is Solicitor Grossfield okay with turning it around in a week? I just want to it's not a lot of stuff, but I just want to make sure he's good to put it.
Solicitor Grossfield, are you still there? Are we burdening you?
No, I'm still here. No, thanks for consideration, but I'm not anticipating any issues. I will have it to the committee for the next meeting.
And you heard and marked the addition and deletion that were recommended by the committee?
I did, yes.
Okay, all right, so we will double check those when we do our final vote. So, if there's no discussion, there's a motion on the floor to send this document to the solicitor as amended to be put in final form and to postpone to our meeting next week. All those, roll call. Let me get my list. Counselor Doucette.
Counselor Doucette votes yes.
Counselor Wagner.
Counselor Wagner votes yes.
Counselor Landers.
Councilor Landis votes yes.
Counselor Navin.
Counselor Navin votes yes.
And Counselor Roby votes yes. Thank you all. I'm sure Counselor Ossing thanks you, and I thank him for all of his work that he put into this document, and we'll see where we go with it. So with that, be appropriate for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Counselor Ossing, for getting this stuff done, and motion to adjourn.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. I'll do a roll call. Counselor Landers.
Councilor Landis votes yes.
Counselor Doucette.
Counselor Doucette votes yes.
Counselor Navin.
Counselor Navin votes yes.
Counselor Wagner.
Counselor Wagner votes yes.
And Counselor Roby votes yes. We are adjourned at 9:04. Thank you, everyone.